They are used to help people with breathing difficulties or lung conditions to get the oxygen they need. Oxygen plants in hospitals are industrial systems that produce oxygen for medical use. Essentially, they take out or at least separate things like humidity and bacteria and other elements to produce oxygen suitable for medical purposes. But as you know, in many cases in South Africa, if an expense is necessary and justified, there's always an official looking to sponge off public money nearby. The Minister of Public Works, Dean MacPherson, is probing how 3 companies secured a mouth-watering 836 million rand tender to install oxygen plants in public hospitals, with 2 of these companies allegedly lacking proper regulatory registration from SAHPRA, the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. One of them without even a physical address, it's alleged. This is according to investigations by Bongani and the Daily Maverick. And they're also alleging that key players, including the Director General of the Department of Health and the CEO of the implementing agency, may have paved the way for these questionable deals. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean MacPherson, joins us now. Welcome back, Minister. Thank you for your time.
Good morning to you, Bongani, and good morning to your listeners.
All right, so we're talking about nearly R1 billion here of this oxygen plant contract scandal. It shocked many. What were your initial thoughts when these irregularities came to light?
I must first give credit to Bongani and Daily Maverick for blowing the whistle on the story. And the moment that it was brought to my attention, I immediately initiated a correspondence with the Independent Development Trust so that I could get a better understanding of what exactly had taken place and what our response as a department would be to these very serious allegations. We engaged in a number of letters backwards and forwards. Information wasn't always forthcoming. And it was at that point that I started to worry that there is a problem here. Now, I mean, as you said in your intro, these are life-saving mechanisms that people need, and particularly in public hospitals. And to have something like this at risk was just simply not acceptable to myself, nor to the Minister of Health, who I consulted regularly on this. I think the first... Sorry, Bongani. I think the real giveaway was, that this tender started out at 215 million rand and then ended up at 830 million rand. I mean, no one can quite explain how those escalation costs took place, and it's not something that we can accept.
I want you to have a listen to a conversation my colleague John Pullman conducted with one of the investigative journalists at Bongani, Azara Karim, just in terms of some of the basics that were overlooked when it came to issuing this tender. Have a listen.
So this is a project to install oxygen plants at hospitals across South Africa. This process from the beginning was completely riddled with red flags. And this started with Peter Louis Myberg's article, which drew attention to the company awarded the contract, King, which actually didn't have an office. Couldn't find a location or head office for this company, and also did not have SAHPRA accreditation that was needed to actually install these plants. And then you have, excessive price increases, and a company awarded this contract that really should not have been. If there have been money paid, we cannot confirm at this stage. The contract was withdrawn according to a statement released by the IDP yesterday. And that statement actually came off the back of questions that Bongani and Daily Maverick had asked the IDP, which implicated the DG of Health and the CEO of the IDP in pushing the tender over the finish line.
We'll come to those specific allegations in terms of the officials, but what does it say to you that millions can be given to companies that ostensibly don't even have a physical address, that are not registered in terms of the authority that they would need to be, SAHPRA in this instance? I mean, those are basics you would think you would need to jump over before you got awarded such a contract.
Absolutely, Bongani. And, I think it speaks to the disease that has infected public procurement in this country, where the question is not asked about how do we get value for money for the citizens of this country, but how do officials get as much money as possible. And that is the stark choice that many people make, and for the wrong reasons. And that's why we've intervened, and we've said very clearly that this sort of behavior and these sort of actions are not going to be accepted, certainly not under my watch, and certainly not under the Department of Health's watch.
Let's speak about the broader questions around this. I mean, as a layperson, I may not understand all of this fully, but maybe you can explain it to me. Why is an implementing agent needed in the first instance? Doesn't that bring another layer of bureaucracy potentially open to abuse? In other words, why would this machinery not be bought directly from the original equipment manufacturers in the first instance?
I think it's a very good question, Bongani. And in fact, previously in the sixth administration, which obviously I wasn't there, some discussions had been taking place around this exact point, and the need for the IDT to even exist in its form because of questions like this. You create management fees and you create costs. That is something that we are actively wanting to bring back to the table around how procurement should be done, and whether there are ways, in fact, to actually save on that. So, I think that this is a question that we're going to seek to answer in the investigation that we have now launched, not only just into this issue, but into the governance crisis that exists, in my view, in the IDT. And hopefully we'll be able to solve that question that you ask and be able to report back to the South African public.
All right. At the center of this storm is the Department of Health Director General, Dr. Sandile Buthelezi, of course, who we know was previously embroiled in the Digital Vibes saga. He was cleared of that. But now it's alleged that he collaborated with the implementing agency, the IDT CEO, to get these contracts over the line, ignoring concerns raised by the bid evaluation committee.
Look, it's difficult for me to comment on another department's officials, but suffice to say that Minister Motsoaledi and myself worked really closely on this issue because it cut across both of our departments, and we both had to find answers, not only to provide to the President, but also to provide to the public. And I'm sure that those are the questions that he is seized with regarding his officials. Regarding our officials within the IDT, I have said very clearly that they cannot investigate themselves. It would be patently illogical to allow an organization at the center of an alleged corruption saga to investigate itself. So we have said that's not going to happen. And we also said that the trust is not core, so it cannot take those sorts of decisions. And we're going to intervene decisively to bring good governance back to our department and to the entities that are within my remit.
Yeah. As you said earlier, even when you asked for documents following the revelations by Bongani and the Daily Maverick, you were given the runaround.
Well, that's the first sign to me that there are problems in the darkness, and the only way that you can deal with that is to shed light. And so we pushed. I don't think that we have everything currently. I think if you go online, you'll see that there is a sort of a bot campaign that's been launched, in defense of the IDT and in attack in the work that we are doing. And this actually really is very similar to what we saw under the state capture years, that the moment that people start dealing with corruption, start going after officials that have allegations of wrongdoing, that these public and social media campaigns are launched. So we're not fazed by it. We're absolutely resolute to bring good governance to government. That is our duty as the executive, and we're going to do it without fear or favor.
As I said in my introduction, so often in South Africa, when something actually is needed for the greater public good, often it's an opportunity for some officials to lick their lips in anticipation of windfalls. And what that's led to is a distrust, right, from the public about the transparency of state contracts. So what systems should we be putting in place to prevent this kind of thing from happening again?
It's a good question, Bongani, because trust has to be built into the system. For too long, we've allowed a predatory elite in government to take money that belongs to the South African citizens. And so what we are doing going forward is we've adopted a model that was actually pioneered in KwaZulu-Natal now, where all bid adjudication committees will be visually and audibly recorded. So there is never any doubt or ability to hide behind sort of the secrecy of these committees. Those will obviously be available to myself and to the public on request. So that's how we're going to build transparency in the system. And that we must also be absolutely clear on what are our deliverables and the costs. And where costs inflate 300%, as we saw in this case, we've got to intervene. Now, the important point that the Minister of Health makes is that this was donor funding from the Global Health Fund. And this is...
Even they balked, didn't they?
Absolutely. And it's my belief, and I do stand to be corrected, that no money has been transferred. So I think that we've intervened early enough, and that's why I'm so grateful to Bongani and Daily Maverick for bringing this to our attention. So we've been able to save that relationship with the Global Fund, who do amazing work in the South African healthcare sector. But, of course, whether it's global donors or South African taxpayers, we've got to protect and preserve every rand that is spent in public procurement.
All right, Dean MacPherson, Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, appreciate your time. Once again, I think it underscores the incredible work, the invaluable work to this society that is done by investigative journalists. Because, of course, had the revelations not come from the pen of Bongani and the Daily Maverick, we probably wouldn't have had that conversation you've just heard.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions,
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.